Good evening, everybody. Thank you very much to Rabbi Scheiman for making a special accommodation. We originally had him scheduled in a couple of weeks, but our planned guest had an emergency that came up, so I reached out to Rabbi Scheiman, and he very graciously agreed to reschedule for tonight. So thank you very much. Rabbi Scheiman is the longest-standing shliach in all of the state of Illinois at this point. Is that correct, Rabbi?
That's correct.
That's correct. And he's does so many things, Chabad in Niles, Des Plaines, and primarily he is running the Hinda Institute, helping Illinois' neediest Jews who are behind bars. Unfortunately, it's not a well-known and it's not a very glamorous, perhaps, position, but it's one that Rabbi Scheiman takes to bring the Rebbe's message, to bring light into the darkest places. So, Rabbi, our first question is, what is a nice Jewish boy like you doing in jail? How did this come about? How did you decide to make this part of your shlichus? Can you give us the story?
It's a very simple story. It's not very complicated at all. I never spent a day in jail, thank God, in my whole life until I met Rabbi Moskowitz. And he explained that in my position as working as the program director for Lubavitch Chabad of Illinois, it's not going to be easy for him to pay the salaries, and so I should do activities that don't incur any extra costs, and learn with people, put on tefillin with people. And I arrived in Chicago 2 weeks before Purim, and so it would have to be within the first month that I was here. Rabbi Moskowitz got a call in the office, and he directed the call to me. He said I should take care of it. There was a chassid in Crown Heights who called up. He was in the wallpaper business, and he did business with a company in Chicago. I think the name of the company was Berlin's, but I don't see those stores around anymore. So it must have been a company that existed in the 1970s, 80s. I don't know how far it went after that, but apparently Mr. Berlin told this Crown Heights chassid that he has a problem. His son got in trouble with the law. Him and another one of his associates, they were in real estate. They owned buildings in the west side of Chicago, on the south side of Chicago, and mysteriously some buildings kept burning down. And the investigators, for some reason, they didn't think they were accidents, and so this man's son unfortunately ended up in prison, and it was a couple of weeks before Pesach. I guess he was out on bond, but he got sentenced, and he was sent to the prison. So he said, can we make sure he gets what he needs for Pesach? At least matzah, at least grape juice. So what do you do when you've never been to a prison? You call the Illinois Department of Corrections. They call up the Joliet Correctional Center and ask to speak to the chaplain. And that's what I did. And I told them, there's a couple of Jews. We got a call. How do we make sure they get matzah and grape juice? So I think he said, just bring it down. I'll make sure that they get it. So I went to the Joliet prison. I delivered the matzah and grape juice. I did not see the men. I think I just met the chaplain, and that was the end of the story. That was the end of the story until there was another call, maybe 6 months later, and then there was another call about 6 months later. People who had their loved ones being incarcerated, Jews. There was a call in the early 80s, maybe must have been 1981, 82, from the B'nai B'rith Women's Organization. They turned to Chabad because they had a group of former Jewish incarcerated, and they were formerly incarcerated, and they established an organization to assist Jewish prisoners. And they approached the B'nai B'rith women who were into social action, and they contacted Chabad to see if there would be a rabbi that would be interested in helping in this effort. So I went to that meeting, and there were actually women there that had Jews that were incarcerated, and I found out about them. In fact, the very first Jew that I met, one of the first Jews that I met in the early 80s, was only a teenager. was still in juvenile, and now we're 40 years ahead. He now is his 80. He became he turned over his life. He became a Chabad Chassid. This the person I met as a teenager has a son that got smicha from the Chabad school in California, and now he has a grandson living in the Chabad community, a grandson in Montreal. So there is already grandchildren from this event. But there weren't a lot of Jews I met, but I got very fired up about this type of work. Like Rabbi Epstein had mentioned in the beginning, the whole philosophy of Chabad is bringing light to the darkest places. And someone who does a very dark act on the spiritual level and goes to a prison, which is a very oppressive location. And then some of these prisons are very, very far away. Some of them, until it closed up, there was the Tams Correctional Center, which was almost 400 miles away from Chicago. So to go to such a faraway place in such a dark environment and visit someone who did dark deeds, that and then to reach them with light, that's what it's all about. To make this dwelling place for Hashem in the darkest places. So I started out volunteering. Eventually, it became more serious. Rabbi Moskowitz, with the help of Senator Howard Carroll, who was then more powerful in the government, he set up a meeting with corrections, with the governor's office. There was a lieutenant governor at the time, Ilana Ravner, Judge Ravner, who was the lieutenant governor, also a Jewish woman. And there was a meeting convened, and they decided that just like there are Catholic priests and there are Protestants and there are contractors of all religions that get paid as contractors, so why should the rabbi only be going in as a volunteer? And they gave me access to the lists, and things grew and grew and grew from that point on. Now I have 3 other chaplains visiting for me. I have a number of other volunteers, and presently we are reaching out to 5 federal prisons in the state of Illinois, up to 25 state prisons every month, depending on if there are Jewish people there. And then Hill County Jail is a constant. That's a weekly visit. That's sort of like our minor league system. If you graduate from Hill County Jail, some people don't make it. They can't hack it. They go back out to the street. They get kicked out. But those who graduate and go on to, they go to the state system, they get to the major league, the prison system. So Cook County Jail. And then occasionally we have people in Kankakee in the prison there, sometimes in McHenry County Jail. There's a few other county jails in the collar counties that get visited once in a while. So it started off small, but it's grown.
Can you give us a rough number? I mean, at an approximate time, how many Jews are we talking about in the correctional system, from north to south, east to west? Approximate number, is it 1,000, 50, 12?
I would, the rough number is no less than 100, but no more than 150. And that number does include non-Jewish people as well, which either may have been adopted by Jewish families. They may have been, from an intermarried family with one Jewish parent. They may have a Jewish wife and they have Jewish children, or they may be just seeking to, this is what they've chosen. They'd like to actually convert to Judaism, although over 40 years, not one person who I've ever met inside Man and Woman has ever converted when they got out. But they still come to the services. And in fact, we have one gentleman who comes by Rabbi Epstein's minyan on Sunday mornings, who is one of these gentlemen. He remained what we call a Ben Noah. He follows the 7 laws of Noah, but that's, under the Torah, you learn from rabbis, and I visited him for about 8 years, and he's been out for 20 plus years. And so I have this gentleman, similar to the man who comes on Sunday morning. I have about a dozen gentlemen like that, or women that never converted, but they stay in touch. They've changed their lives. They're better people. So in this 150, I'm including that group of people. There might be 30% that aren't Jewish in that group.
So what are some of the halachic issues? You must have some very curious questions for Rabbanim about how is it in practice for a Jew who's in prison to put on tefillin, to keep kosher, to hear the shofar, to hear the Megillah on Purim. What can they what do the circumstances permit them to do? And have you run into I can only imagine, if you could share with us some of the curious halachic shilas that may come about in your unique position as bringing them Torah and people who are hopefully there not only punitively, but reparatively, and they're repairing themselves not only in their societal behavior, but in their relationship with Hashem. Can you give us a sense of what mitzvahs can Jews in prison observe?
Okay, there is no mitzvah that a Jew in prison there is no mitzvah that cannot be observed. We've had cases where a man, by the yard site, we got permission for a minyan to go down, so he would be able to say Kaddish. He couldn't, obviously he couldn't serve the whole yard site, but we were able to get a minyan to come in. We got permission for that. We've had people that have gone out on Tashlich, but it wasn't on Rosh Hashanah. In the middle of the week, the warden took a man in the 10 days of Tshuva, took him to the Fox River near the prison and let him do Tashlich by the Fox River. Men could make Havdalah, they can make Kiddush, Lulav and Esrog, Shofar, Hanukkah, Pesach. Now Hanukkah is coming up, so are some questions, halachic questions. And in general, prison cells, a lot of them have the bathroom right in the room. So it's a halachic question, how do you daven? And there's a question if covering it with a towel is good enough. Do you have to have maybe a box that covers the area? There's different opinions of the Rabbanim on how to do that, but definitely it has to be covered in some form or fashion. And a lot of the men are in these rooms where you have the toilet in it. So they have to it probably, because that's their only room they could do it in, they could do their prayers. So they found some leniencies on how to go about covering it somewhat. Hanukkah, the question comes up, do you really have to light the candle yourself? Because there's an issue. In the 90s, cigarettes became banned in Cook County Jail and in the Illinois Department of Corrections. I think in the federal prisons too. So if there's no cigarettes, that means there are no matches. There's no matches allowed in the prison. So just getting the menorah lit is an issue. And we've already explained, we found out Shabbos candles, there are cases where the Rabbanim will let you use an electric for Shabbos candles, just like sometimes in a hospital. So we have one woman right now, because of the pandemic, and they were doing candles, but right now they're allowing her to use an electric. But Hanukkah, the Rabbanim say the Hanukkah candles have to be real candles. But they don't want the inmates to have contact with the fire. So if you have a guard light it. So sometimes the guard lights the shamish, and just like, sometimes you have in the president of the United States or a politician gets the honor to light the first candle, which is the shamus, and then the Jew lights all the rest of the candles. So sometimes they let the Jewish people. Other times it's stricter. So, Rabbanim have said that if their candles are light in their presence, they can make the bracha. There are super maximum security prison, like this place I was visiting in Tams, which was shut down because it was deemed that it was not humanitarian. It was just subhuman conditions. And
no cable TV, huh?
Huh?
No cable TV. That was the problem.
No, they had cable TV.
Oh,
But
wow, it wasn't that bad.
TAMS is super maximum security, and you're locked up 23 out of 24. But they do give you a nice air-conditioned room, and you do have cable TV, but just no freedom and nobody to see, and solitary confinement. So the men are in single cells. So there, the chaplain, the non-Jewish, went in every night, and he lit the menorah on the gallery, and all the men from the different, they could see out of their room, they could see the candles. So the Rabbanim in that case allowed that. I had a Rav that said a lady has to light the Shabbos candles, even the men, but he said after 5 minutes, even after 5 minutes being lit, if the officers needed to put it out for security reasons, they fulfilled their obligation of lighting Shabbos candles. So there's different scenarios that come up in the prison. Now, for just this sukkahs, we have a Jew in a facility, and for sukkahs, we had to go to a lot of negotiating to allow the sukkah to be put up in this prison. And the only problem is they had like 7 people. They only gave each person like a half hour. So there was a Jew, and it was the end of Sukkot, beginning Shmini Atzeres. So his question is, should he eat the Suda on Sukkot, or should he combine that into Shmini Atzeres, or should he make Kiddush back in his cell? But if it's in Shmini Atzeres, you don't need to eat in the Sukkah. It was a whole, and he doesn't make a Leisha B'Sukkah. Doesn't he make a Leisha B'Sukkah? Should he start the meal before or after? And I forgot what all the halach. It actually went, we sent it to different Rabbanim. I gave it to Rabbi Posner to research, and he spoke to about 6 different Rabbanim across the United States to figure out what this man should do on Sukkot when he can only do one meal or the other meal, and which was more important, and which should he do? Should he do the Leisha B'Sukkah? Should he wait till Shmini Atzeres when you don't make it? I forgot what the answer was, but it was a very interesting shaila.
Fascinating. And now, can you talk to us about some of the services you provide after they get out of prison? The person's in prison 2 years, sometimes 10, 20, as you mentioned. I mean, it's just unimaginable for us. I mean, just what that means to be in prison for a decade, for 20 years, for 25 years. And then the person gets out, and how do they re-accommodate themselves into the community? What are some of the services that you provide for people after their prison experience, if they're still willing to see you?
Right. You said the key word at the end. I always tell everybody when they're about the last time I'm seeing them, I say, it was nice seeing you. I know you'll never see me again. Well, you know, this is the last time we'll be meeting. And then they get all defensive. What do you mean? Of course I'm going to see you. And I said, no, you're not going to see me. Most people don't. Why don't people see us when they get out? Because it's very painful. It's almost like you were just, had a traumatic experience, and you get all types of flashbacks to the event. And since I went to prison, them seeing me, that triggers these types of events. But there are a sizable amount of people that do stay in touch. And the reason they stay in touch is because one of the services we provide is while they're in, they still have a wife, children, mother, father, aunt, uncle, grandparent, grandchildren that are on the street that are connected to them. So we have a family support group which supports the mothers, which supports the wives, which supports the children and the other relatives that are involved with them. And so when they get out and we're in touch with the family, obviously we'll see them as well. We'll continue servicing them. And when they get out, so one thing we do is we never stop being connected to anybody we've ever seen. So I have people that I'm still seeing 20, 30, and 40 years later. And we've, unfortunately, some people we have, it gets to the point in life where we have to provide funeral services for them, but we go through their entire life. Whatever they need, we're there for them. And we have 3 types of people. We have some people that have a family. They go home to the family, so we continue having. I have one of our chaplains specifically teaches people that were formerly incarcerated. He learned every week. He learns with at least 15 people. He has a share either now during the pandemic. It's more on Zoom and the phone, but he would have personal or calling on the phone. I myself have about 10 people I give a share to every week on top of that. And we stay in touch that way. So we give them the spiritual support. We also help them find employment. Either we have certain employers, like we have one gentleman who owns a number of nursing homes, and he just hired 2 people that I recommended. And believe it or not, these people have felonies. Not only that, they are registered sex offenders, but they're this job on their computer that he needs them has nothing to do with their crime, and he is non-judgmental. And if I recommend them, and I know that they've been through therapy, and I know that they're on the right track, he hired them. And then we have other employers. We have certain people that it's very hard when you have a felony to get a job someplace else, but you could open your own business. So I have a number of individuals that have started their own businesses, and they will also hire formerly incarcerated people into their businesses. So we have one group of people that open their own businesses. We have another group that needs to find jobs, which we do our best. If we can't, we set them up with different, either in the Jewish or the wider community, there are agencies that help people find jobs. Then we have people that have addiction issues, and that's a whole separate issue. So we have to make sure they get the help that they need for their addiction problem. And sadly, we've had to do a few levayas for people that didn't get the help they needed, and they needless to say, it was not a happy ending. And we have a group. I just had at 6 o'clock tonight. Every Monday we have a Hinda addiction support group, and we meet on Zoom, and we have people get together for an hour, share their experiences. It's not a 12-step program. It's because it's open to all types of. Some people aren't even in a program, but everybody brainstorms together and shares their experience. Then I have once a week it's called Rebounders. The Hindu Rebounders group are people that are presently or were formerly on our registered sex offenders, and they're really isolated from the community. So this is the one time they could get together, feel safe, and they're able to talk between each other about how they overcome their challenges, and they have a safe group that they could talk to each other and not be looked upon in any negative way. And then we have people with mental health problems, which we have to obviously try to find housing, try to find treatment, try to find people that will help them. What does a person do? We have a lady, she's a bubby age now. She's not a bubby, she's in her 50s, but she finished a 40-year prison sentence. And she is, and she's at I would say her brain is on an 8th grade level, and not very, and she got out after 20 years. Her brother lives on the East Coast, so she's in a halfway house, and we have somebody who goes down and takes her. We took her to the Ark a few times, trying to get her disability. We're trying to find another place where she could go after she gets out of this halfway house, taking her shopping. She doesn't know how to use it. Imagine, she doesn't know what a cell phone is. She doesn't know what a tablet is. She doesn't even know how to use a bus. So she needs a lot of support. So we provide that support for people that are on that level as well.
Rabbi Scheiman, you're my hero. You're saving lives, you're transforming them, you're bringing them out of the darkness. Share with us, if you might, how has your life been changed by meeting the people who, society looks at people in prison. You mentioned some of the crimes. I mean, decades in prison. Not everybody there is innocent except the people that you meet. And then you encounter people at the human level, you rehabilitate them, you visit them. You had some tragedies even after they get out. Maybe they don't want to talk to you. Maybe they go back, recidivism and so on. Can you share with us, how has it changed your life as a Jew, as a chassid? How has it affected you to be involved with people who are not on what we commonly think of as the popular rabbi track? You're not giving the daf yomi shir. You're not sitting around schmoozing on Shabbos Kiddush with them. How has your life been changed 40 years of working in this kind of beautiful, beautiful way?
Well, I would describe the change in that I feel that, again, going back to what we were talking about, bringing light to the darkest places and redeeming the unredeemable, or as I'd like to say, I am in the spiritual recycling business. The souls that have been thrown on the junk heaps of society, going there and recycling those neshamas and finding the little, they go through the crucible and get refined, and you see the precious stone or the diamond gets dusted off that's underneath that. So that's very rewarding, and it's to the point where, number one, I am able, if I could deal with the people I'm dealing with, I could deal better with the people that daven in my own Chabad house, which a lot of people could, boy, it allows me to have a lot more patience. I'll tell you a clear way how it changed me. I think in my first marriage, I think it was my 25th wedding anniversary, and my public pledge to my wife is I told her I would treat her as well as I treat the people in prison. Because here I am, patient with anybody who's done anything. And then we know how it is when you get home, the first one you let your hair down to, the first one you blow the steam off to, and sometimes our spouse takes the brunt of everything we did the whole day. And I realized how wrong that was. And I realized that if I could be this patient and be that not judgmental and overlook everything that people are doing, why can't I do that with my own spouse, with my own children, with my own community? And it's allowed me, it changed me where I can use these skills to just be a better person to everybody. And I feel like even if I go to the Masifta or the Lubavitch High School or speak with the young people, and I think they feel somebody in the room who's not judging them, and they open up, they speak about things. So it's opened up avenues of communication which maybe would not have been there if not for that. So I think that's one way it has changed me. Just
Very
changed me
beautiful.
to be a more sensitive, better human being overall.
Very beautiful. You mentioned your late wife of blessed memory, that the Hindu Institute has sort of been
Yes.
rebranded in her honor. If you could spell out for everybody what the letters HINDA honors your wife of blessed memory. What does Hinda stand for? Where does that title a reference to?
While I was sitting at Shiva, I was already thinking and making resolutions and what will we do to make sure her name lives on? And it's an acronym. H stands for helping, IND is individuals, and the A is ascend, helping individuals ascend. So, reaching down, taking people no matter where they are, meeting them where they're at, and lift them up and bring them on board, as they say.
Beautiful. What a tribute to her. Mel, jump in here with a question, but make sure you're not muted.
Yeah, it's a comment, not a question. I agree with you. The rabbi is my hero also. I've had so many contacts with people that had service, ended up in jail, and ended up with Rabbi Scheiman. And a couple of them I won't mention, but Rabbi, you and I years ago, we talked about one. He was a lawyer that got in trouble.
Yeah.
He wasn't the only lawyer in Yale. But I know that you're known nationally because I had a case in New York and a case in Wisconsin. In Wisconsin, it was Rabbi Spitzer. Do you know him?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
His organization is Reaching Out.
Correct.
And I had a kid that was in trouble there, and he said, you know what? I think you got a guy over there, Rabbi Scheiman. I think he's better suited for this. He's got better contacts with the prison. I mean, you're known all over. I have a list at the end of the year that I should, God forbid, forget to send a donation. Your Hindu Institute is on the top, and right next to it is Camp Gan Israel. For those that don't know, and once in a while I get confused. I'll send 2 checks to the camp, and I forgot about the institute. But you're a lovable guy. Everybody loves you. You do so much good and so many families. If we weren't on Zoom with people, I could mention a couple of specific examples that I know.
Rabbi Scheiman is my hero. That is for sure. So Rabbi Scheiman, thank you. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for accommodating a little bit of the last minute switcheroo. Hashem should continue to bless you, to bring the light where the darkness is. And we're all in a prison of gullus, and this coronavirus has just put us in a kind of isolation. But speaking with you brings us the joy and gives us that opportunity to have our sparks uplifted, helping individuals ascend. So we should all ascend out of this gullus to the Gula Mitzvah Shlema. So thank you so much for joining us. Thank you especially for accommodating us a last minute switcheroo. Really appreciate it. Tomorrow night, everybody, 9 o'clock for some Parsha thoughts. Monday night, as I mentioned, we'll be sending out a special communal Zoom in honor of Rosh Chodesh Kislev with Rabbi Shais Taub. You'll be getting 100 emails and WhatsApps about that. But that you do need to do a complimentary registration for. It's a different Zoom, and we'll look forward to it. Thank you, Rabbi. Shkoyach to you for all the good that you do. Keep on doing all that good and keep on bringing the blessings to everybody. Thank you, 1,000 thanks.